And unfortunately, the situation is now, yes, they proved all the idiots wrong last week in spite of the loss, shut a lot of people up. They also proved, I believe, in my opinion, that I'm still not convinced Indiana's on the elite tier of the Big Ten or the national level. Okay. So we'll get to that here in a little bit looking forward. But the frustrating, disappointing part about all of this is the fact that now they've lost 2 games in different ways, but by 1 score apiece. They've lost 2 games against 2 really solid to maybe, I don't want to say both teams great, but the rankings think that Iowa State and Indiana are both really good. They've lost both games, one of which being on the road by a single score. I know they took a late safety, but it was a 1-score loss regardless. And so, yeah, that's just disappointing because Iowa's usually really good in tight ball games. And if you're going to have success the way you want to have success and maybe sneak into a playoff any year under Kirk Ferentz, you're probably going to have to win those close games. It was the difference in 2009, versus 2008. 2008, they lose 4 games by, I think, a combined 12 points. They go 8-4 and then 9-4 beating South Carolina in the Outback Bowl. But in 2009, they win an Orange Bowl, go 11-2 because they won all those close games. They beat UNI close in a close one. They beat Michigan State in a close one. They beat Indiana in a close one, and just go down the list. So there's still time. I don't agree. I'm not saying you were making the claim. You said at the outset, is this season slipping away? It's incredibly disappointing on every level. I try to be as objective as I can each and every week, but I would be lying if I didn't say I was incredibly disappointed after that loss Saturday. Just, again, how it all transpired, the opportunities that I felt were missed, and the fact that it's loss number 2. I was not going to be shocked if they had a loss by now, but I did not think they'd have 2. And none of the losses I had them going 9-3 preseason. But the losses I had them accumulating were later in the season. So to answer your comment, I could see why some feel like hope is lost. This is going to sound insane to some people, but this is how I am as a football fan / analyst. I'm looking at this saying they have 2 losses. They just got to win the rest of their games. And some people are going to say, you're crazy. They're not beating Oregon and Penn State and USC. And you're almost certainly right? You're almost certainly right. But the way this new landscape of college football is, it takes one big win to change the narrative. So you may think that's a delusional way of looking at it, but I can't imagine throwing in the towel 5 games in on a team that I actually think is pretty good. I think this team proved Saturday they're pretty good. And the numbers, here's the other thing. They won this game, they lost this game in a close way. It was a tight margin of defeat. And they nearly won it the way they win a lot of games. But there were some differences. And I say that because, yes, they haven't won a lot of close games against good opponents, or really any, since 2021. But even if you go back to 2021, Penn State, Iowa State, they didn't produce much offense in those games. And I'm not just talking about points. I'm talking about yardage as well. They were better Saturday on offense than the score would indicate. Normally, it's kind of the opposite way around. Usually, Iowa barely scores, but they're even worse. The eye test says they're even worse on offense than the score indicates because they get extra points out of special teams and defense. That didn't really happen Saturday. They moved the ball quite effectively, but they played very conservative on 4th down, which we expected because they wanted to control the field. And, yeah, they lost Mark Gronowski late, which really hurt them in putting this game away. Ifs, ands, and buts, nobody cares. But I do believe if Mark Gronowski was in for that final drive, I think Iowa wins because I think they probably at least advanced the ball past where they did to give Drew Stevens a better kick. It's not a guarantee. I would not have been shocked if he had gone in and thrown a touchdown pass. So the screenplay would have worked, I would think. I don't see Mark Gronowski missing that screenplay. So there's a lot we can talk about. We talked about it for a long time Saturday. But the way I look at it is it's not over till it's over. And they're 3-2. We're not even halfway through the season yet. They get a bye week at a good time to get some people healthy. They should be able to clean. I have confidence in LeVar Woods cleaning up special teams. Hey, The DBs that were going to get burned by Mendoza, they didn't really get burned by Mendoza. They got burned by Mendoza maybe 2-3 plays in this game. I think 3 if you want to count the first touchdown pass, the deep ball that flipped the field. I want to say second quarter for Indiana. And then on the slant play, it was on all-out blitz, put Lee on an island, and he didn't play it well. And he missed a tackle to boot. And then they're missing some tackles right now as well. But so much better than we saw first quarter against Rutgers. So, yeah, if they beat Wisconsin, Mark, they get those difficult games at home. So it is frustrating that they couldn't win this difficult game at home. And I think the ante is upped here in a couple of weeks when they welcome Penn State and Oregon to town. But they are at home. And Saturday, if it proved anything or reaffirmed anything we already knew, it's that Iowa can compete with teams at home. They haven't always proven that they can do it on the road against the best of the best. And I'm not saying Indiana's the best of the best, but this is a reminder they can compete at home versus almost anyone.
So anytime that we looked at the schedule during the offseason and discussed a path to the playoff and took it section by section throughout the season, I agree with you. Hope is not lost. The games are still in front of them. Nobody is unbeatable. I don't see any 1985 Chicago Bears teams on the schedule. Everyone is beatable. However, it's a narrow path because I think we both looked at the Iowa State Indiana section in the first quarter of the season as get one of those and then keep going from there. So they didn't get one of those, and that's why it's obviously a slim path from here on out.
But if they get one of Penn State or Oregon, which I know some people are going to say no chance, Corey, and it's certainly less of a chance than the Indiana game. But if they were to steal the first, say they steal the first one, which I believe is Penn State, correct? I don't have the schedule up in front of me. But no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is Penn State. It's the game after Wisconsin. So if they say let's just play this scenario. If they beat Penn State they take care of, I mean, obviously they lose to Wisconsin on the road. All bets are off at that point. Like that's it. We got problems, right? But if they beat Wisconsin and then beat Penn State, Mark, doesn't the narrative change a little bit? Like people are at least going to be like, okay, now hold on a second. They just beat Penn State. So if they can beat Penn State at home, they can at least be competitive against Oregon at home. I'm just saying, like, people don't have to believe that that's going to happen. But I do think they proved Saturday the defense is a lot better than people were giving them credit for. After the Albany game, after the Rutgers game, and the numbers say the offense didn't play badly. So they got to get Mark back. They're not going anywhere without Mark Gronowski. I'm just telling you that right now. They're not going anywhere without Mark Gronowski. I thought it was interesting today. Tim Lester made a comment about how Hank Brown is a better athlete and a better runner than we know. And I have not seen that. I trust him when he says that. He says that he's more of the edge runner. I can't remember how he described that. He more so compared Hank Brown to like a Brendan Sullivan type of runner. But man, I thought Mark, I don't know how much you watched the game because I know there were other good games on Saturday, Mark, but didn't you feel like Mark was playing well on Saturday before he got knocked out?
So I watched the 15 to 18 minute highlight package because I didn't watch the game. The game was on Peacock, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, or I would have had my eye on it. 2:30 start Central Time, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, it was in that window. So I went back, watched it, knew the final score, and first of all, yes, I had the same reaction in the aftermath that you had in real time, that when Lutmer made the interception, I thought, how did they lose this game? This can be interesting to see how this plays out. And I'm looking at the play-by-play, and I'm watching the game and watching the play-by-play at the same time. So, yeah, my initial thought was, okay, he intercepts this pass and they kick this field goal and obviously give up a touchdown. But what would be the sequence of play calling? Am I going to agree with this play calling that I see, or am I going to evaluate it as too conservative, just playing for a field goal? Which again, if they execute the screen pass, I can trust Tim Lester to say that it was open for momentum to break and them to make a big gain, if not a touchdown there.
Isn't it hard to be real critical of Tim Lester, though, in that situation with the backup quarterback who had thrown an interception like the previous drive? Like that's my hard. That's even when the play happened in real time, Mark, I was like, maybe you run the ball here. I didn't even know that I wanted them to put the ball in the air. Yeah. And trust your special teams. And that's the other. I've heard some people since Saturday say, well, why didn't they run the ball to the middle of the field? Well, typically right-footed kickers kick well from the left hash. I don't think that was a concern. And I do believe that a screen pass makes sense because it should be a low-risk throw, Mark, that gives them an opportunity at big yardage.
I'm going to address this comment on the screen. If you're a football player on a football team, you always have something to play for, obviously. Okay, obviously, my title to the live stream had to do with the competitive nature of the season, in the goal being playing for a championship. Yes. If they were 0-11 and they're playing Nebraska the last weekend of the season, yes, we can all argue that they play for pride and they're playing in front of 80,000 people and millions on TV, that they're playing for pride and they're playing for the competitive nature. Obviously, I'm talking about the aspirations of winning a championship. Okay.
Real quick,
that has to be explained.
Bob, I appreciate you being here, but see, this comment from Bob says we have to start not realistically thinking of the playoffs and shoot for a respectable season. Why do we have to do anything? Why do we have to do anything? It's just like, and I'm not here to rip anybody, but we had this conversation last week with the Indiana guys. And as I was listening to that later, I was thinking, one of the things one of them said, it might've been Alec. He said, well, that's why we gotta turn our attentions to Iowa. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. You don't have to do anything. What you say or your mindset does not affect what the coaching staff does. So, and my answer to Bob is, if that's going to help you feel better the rest of the way, that's fine. But if another fan can look at this and say, if we win the rest of our games, and I say that's your choice whether you want to identify with the team or not. But if Iowa wins the rest of their games, they're in the playoff. They're not wrong. Whether you think that's impossible or delusional, but you having this mindset does not affect what happens the rest of the season. You get what I'm saying?
I address this all the time, that people will talk in the comment section like their attitude, their mindset, their perspective on the game or the season impacts the team. Like, oh, we better put that behind us and we really need to focus on so-and-so, because if we look ahead, then
oh, by the way, I see Alec is in the chat. So that was good timing. So Alec, love you. Glad we had you on. But that was, I just noticed that later. I'm like, you don't have to we do not, as people who are talking heads, we don't have to have any mindset. Fans don't have to have any mindset. The people that have to worry about that are the players and the staff. If those players are influenced too highly on how we feel because they're watching our content, then the coaching staff doesn't have enough control over what's going on with that team and with that program. So, again, like Steve, like I don't care if you say Iowa will not make the playoffs, no chance. I don't care. I don't care. I feel like I come on here and say that a lot, Mark, but I don't care what someone else says about what I was going to do and what they're not going to. I don't care. All I know is if they go out and win. And by the way, I had them at 9-3. And Mark, I think you and I both agreed it's possible that 9-3 can get you into the playoffs. It is possible. And here's what I would say. I almost think if they were to go and win, like if two of their three losses, I should say this, if one of their 9 wins in that scenario came against either Oregon and Penn State, it actually helps you, along with getting a really good road win against USC. I say that because I think the committee, they haven't gotten blown out by anybody yet. We talked about that. 9-3, you can't get blown out by anybody. But I think the other part of this is the committee would more so value wins over an Oregon or a Penn State or an at USC over a win at home against Indiana or a win early in September at Iowa State. I think it might be splitting hairs there, but I tend to think that's true, and those wins would be later in the season. So if they went 9-3 from, let's just give you a scenario, Mark. I know we don't know what would happen nationally, and some people really resent this conversation occurring. But if Iowa were to win, let's see, how many games we got? 6 of their last 7 games. Let's just assume for this conversation, they beat Penn State in 2 weeks. So they beat Penn State, lose to Oregon, but compete, win at USC, at Nebraska, beat Michigan State, beat Minnesota, beat Wisconsin on the road. I think that's everybody. If they do that, are they in? Probably not, but it's a conversation, right?
So you're taking the conversation in the same direction I was about to point out that there is a silver lining to these 2 losses. Now, it's a thin silver lining, and obviously you wouldn't want to win the games. But if you're going to lose them, 2 things stand out here. Number one, they were both down to the wire, last minute, last second, basically walk-off games. So they lose 2, and Iowa State's winning the rest of its games. They're beating Kansas State or whomever's in front of them at this point. To date, they have their tougher games pretty much ahead of them in the Big 12. But still, Iowa State is taking care of business. Indiana beat Illinois. Indiana's taking care of business to date.
Those are 2 undefeated teams that they've lost to. That's a fact.
Yes. So it's not like if Indiana was coming in with a loss to Illinois and Iowa State had lost a game in the Big 12 or to whomever. So those 2 losses are as good as they can be right now. Their last second losses to undefeated teams. So that's the first thing. Then the second portion of it, I do think what you just stated comes into the minds of the voters, just like it does to the voting public, that the more recent results, subconsciously or consciously, are going to have more of an impact. Because I believe in the resume being the resume and all the games counting in equal. However, there has to be something, again, it could be consciously for some voters of the committee and subconsciously for others that, well, these losses were in September versus, and one of the other close losses was, whether you want to slice up Oregon, Penn State, either way, that their best wins and their best footballs right in front of us. And we are selecting a team to play in the playoffs right now. We're not selecting a team in September.
But here's the deal. They have to beat either Penn State or Oregon for that to even be a minute chance. If they lose both those games, they're relegated to at least 8-4, if not 7-5 at that point. They could still get to 6. Like, it could be 6-6 by season's end. I wouldn't be shocked based on how, some of the games that are on the schedule. Would we be shocked if they lose to Oregon, to Penn State, to USC, and maybe add in a Nebraska? I wouldn't. That would be very disappointing. But that would be, what would that be? That would be 6 losses. So it's a tough schedule, and this is the new reality of the Big Ten. You lose close games, you're probably not going anywhere.
They are going to be an underdog those 3 games for sure.